Mayor Suarez, you jump right out of the gates and you tell me I've got some Miami color going on. And I realize you're talking about my face.
I am. And you went right into like your workouts and Navy SEAL training, which is precisely what I love to talk about because I'm a Navy SEAL fanatic and junkie. I love reading about Navy SEALs. It's probably my only regret in life is not having gone to Annapolis or having joined the Navy and served in the military. You know, it's being a politician or a public servant is sort of like metaphysical, military service because you take bullets, metaphysical bullets, and certainly it's challenging at a certain level. But I'll tell you that I've seen a lot of these these trainings that you're talking about, and I've been super intrigued by them. Tell me about it.
So, before I tell you about why I have this tan and what I'm doing, so that's interesting. So you say your only regret is you wish you would have given. By the way, it's a regret that I share with you. I've talked about it on several occasions. I think when my life is done, I will regret a couple of things. One will be not having more kids. I have two. I wish I had more kids.
Well. I'd love to have more too.
They're a wonderful blessing. So
I'm a 9
I love
and 5-year-old, so I hear you.
And being a dad is awesome. I mean, I don't want it to end. And so I wish I had more kids. And I wish I would have served my country. And I would have liked to think I could have tried to do it in some type of elite capacity, whether or not it's SEAL. I really have come to respect Green Berets at a really high level. So I share that. I wish I would have done that as well. Why didn't you?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a military family. Sometimes, people that come from a military family have a propensity to serve. My father was in politics, so I went into politics. I've been in public service for 13 years. So I started young. I was 30 when I first ran for office. I got elected at 32. But I did jump out of a perfectly good plane with the Army Golden Knights, and I was right after the cutoff of being able to serve, even like as a reserve, right? And I was like so pumped up, I jumped out when I landed on the ground. I was like, okay, where do I sign up? And they're like, yeah, it's too late. But no, I really not only do I appreciate obviously the sacrifices that they make, not only do I appreciate the danger that they face on behalf of our freedoms, but I also really appreciate the discipline, sort of the mental toughness, the adversity that they have to, and the resiliency that they develop. I think, we live in a world where we underappreciate those skill sets. And, when you think about how do we deal with mental health issues, for example, like across the country, when you think about kids, we're not teaching kids resiliency skills. Right. I mean, I created a program as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors with CrossFit and Rogue. Right. And the idea was we wanted to get inner city kids to be able to do CrossFit exercises. By the way, it doesn't have to necessarily be CrossFit. I chose CrossFit because I've been doing CrossFit for a while, for about 10 years. But I think that CrossFit does a few things. Number one, it's hard. Right. Like, so it creates grit and resiliency. Number two, it creates community. Right. Because you have to get together with people. You're usually doing it with a group of people. And number three, we wanted to do it for free by getting our Parks and Rec employees to become CrossFit certified. Dave Castro, who programs the games, was helping us out with getting some promotional stuff. And then Bill, who does Rogue, was also helping us out. We unveiled that about a month ago.
Would you consider yourself, and I hope you won't do the politician thing and just find the most positive answer to this that you possibly can, but I'm curious, following up on both our conversation about CrossFit and about Navy SEALs and what you appreciate about these guys. And by the way, I got to fly. I was with ESPN for years. I got to fly with some Air Force pilots out of Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. They're fighter pilots. And one of the things you learn to appreciate with all these guys is they're just the high level of competency. You're talking about like the professional athletes of soldiers. And no matter what they're doing, flying planes or making amphibious landings in hostile territory, they're just pros. But would you consider yourself, Mayor Suarez, would you consider yourself disciplined?
I would. I mean, look, I don't think you can do what I do. I'm running a $1 billion company with 4,500 employees, 4 labor unions. I have a private sector life. I sit on boards. I work for a major law firm, and now I'm running for president. Right? I don't think you can do all that unless you have intense discipline. There's just not enough hours in the day. You know what
How
I
does
mean?
that manifest, Mayor? Do you get what time do you get up, and what is your day? Is your day highly scheduled and regulated? What time does your
It
day
is.
start?
What I try to do is, first of all, I believe in rest. So I don't believe I know people say, oh, I do it on 3 hours of sleep or 4 hours. I think that's bogus. I do think you need to get adequate sleep. You need to get adequate sleep, adequate nutrition, and exercise on a daily basis to have a healthy lifestyle. So I program all of that, right? I program the amount of sleep that I get. I track the amount of sleep that I get. I track the quality of sleep that I get. I'm very, very studious about my nutrition. Because that's a major influencer of your energy levels throughout the day. And then I schedule working out like an appointment, right? So it's literally as important as anything else that I do in a given day. And I found that, even the busiest people in the world, if you schedule it as an appointment, you're giving it the same priority that you give everything else. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do it. I never buy into the excuse that you're too busy to work out.
Does it float throughout your day in your schedule, or is it like every morning at 6 a.m. or whatever point in the day it is important for you? Is there a certain time every day I could find you working out? Okay.
Yeah, it's every morning at a set time. I do it with my wife. I've been doing it with my wife for about 2 years, and it's probably the best part of my day. I have thought that if I become the president, I will vary the time. Because I don't want our enemies abroad to sort of decide that they want to do nefarious things at a particular time of the day when I'm working out. So I would probably vary it, and I probably would ask a Navy SEALs to train me. So those are fun things that I've actually thought about.
So I'm following just natural curiosity for a moment before I actually get into some of the things I definitely want to ask you about in this conversation. But it's interesting you talked about you grew up in a political family. We're talking about why we both didn't end up serving our country. It is fascinating how we follow our fathers. I'm sure for many of us as well, you follow your mothers down some path of life choices. My father was a small town attorney in Texas. I ended up going to law school. My life choices since then have departed my father's career path, but I certainly begun to take my first steps down the same path that I was shown, that I was modeled, his path. So your dad was mayor of Miami, and you said as you grew up in a political family. So did you kind of always see, perhaps because your dad was mayor and you were in a political family, that this would be your path to be the mayor of Miami and maybe one day run for president?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm not one of these. First of all, I did not know for sure that I was going to get involved in politics. I didn't like politics that much because I saw my dad, and I think everybody idealizes their father, right? Like that's sort of the ideal. My dad is a 9 to 14 kids, came to this country at 12 with nothing, from Cuba, exiled from Cuba, got a full scholarship to high school, presidential scholarship to college, 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, an MPP JD. He speaks 5 languages, and he's written 8 or 9 books. So he's an IQ genius. And he was the first Cuban mayor of Miami. So I had seen, the press and the criticism, things that I didn't think were fair, happen to him. A guy who, again, had this like impeccable resume, and I just was like, I don't know that I want to do that. When I got married, I've been married for 16 years. I had a small business and didn't have kids at the time. We actually went through infertility issues for 4 years, and we actually found out we were pregnant on Father's Day of 2013. But I sort of backed into it. To your point about regret in life, in life when first of all, I'm very grateful for the community that I live in, for all the things that I've achieved because of this community, because this community has believed in me. And I just felt there was a moment where I had been a victim of a home invasion. Of a robbery in my house. I had been involved in some zoning things as a resident, and the person who was on the council ran for mayor and created a vacancy. I was 30 years old, and I said, I don't want to live in regret. I don't want to be one of these guys that just complains about problems. I want to be someone who does something about it. It's just sort of my personality, and so I decided to run. I was the only candidate not union endorsed. And I won by 260 votes. So I always tell people, listen, if 131 people would have changed their mind, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, fine margins of success and failure.
By the way, zero ambition to be the president of the United States. I never thought that was possible. I never even thought about it as a life path. It wasn't until very recently that I began to think that this was possible and something that I should do. Or that I needed to do.
And what? Okay, let's go down this path then. Why are you running for president of the United States?
Yeah, so let me take a couple steps back. So I've never really talked about this, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it. You know, my life started to change. I was actually the first person in Dade County to get COVID, or the second person, and so I started getting a national profile because I went through that journey. I did a diary entry. I brought people in on that journey while I was in quarantine, and people felt very comforted knowing that I was being transparent about it. Then on December 4th of 2020, while New York had kicked out Amazon after winning the HQ2 prize, when California kicked out Elon, I had responded to a tweet that said, what if we move Silicon Valley to Miami, with a very simple phrase, how can I help? Right, and that created a tectonic shift. Miami now is number one in wage growth. We've moved about $3 trillion in assets under managed companies. We've billions of dollars in wages. We have the lowest unemployment in America, and we're number one in tech job growth. So we have completely re-engineered our economic ecosystem. We also lowered taxes to the lowest level ever and saw double-digit growth in our city, 12%, the second most in recorded history. So we have taken a city that was known as the capital of Latin America and made it into a truly global city. So that all started happening. Like, all these things started happening. I started getting more. I became president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so president of all the mayors in the United States. All these things started happening. And I realized that there was, in my opinion, a deficiency in the conversation. I thought the conversation, and by the way, I would have loved to have supported someone that I felt filled this role, because I understand the odds that I'm against, right? I'm relatively unknown. Mayors never made it to the presidency. Hispanics never made it to the presidency. But for me, it wasn't about all those dynamics. For me, it was about, what kind of a conversation do we want to have in this country? How can we bring coherence back to the conversation? How do we focus on solving big problems, which I have a record of doing? And I have a record of bringing people together as well, having been elected by 85%, reelected by 80%, in a county that went 30 points for Hillary the year before I got elected, and 10 points for Republicans a year after I got reelected.
Yeah, that is an incredible success story, and it is an undeniable, objective reality of a success. I would love to talk to you more about then what you would envision as your job of president of the United States. So your answer to my question, I assume, as to why you're running for president, and it was to point to your success story in Miami. But it still didn't, forgive me, Mayor, it still didn't answer my question, though, of why. Why, I guess I heard you in there say you didn't feel like somebody else, be that Donald Trump, I assume, or Ron DeSantis, or Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas. Yeah. Nobody else has satisfied what you feel like answers the problems of the United States of America. But with that objective, positive record on your resume, you as a man, though, why do you want to be president of the United States? Why are you running for president?
Yeah, that's the right question, right? Like, how does it translate, right? How does just being the mayor of a city, right? How does that translate nationally, and why does that make me qualified to be the president, which is obviously a massive endeavor and arguably the most important job in the world. And
I think it's fair, Mayor. Wouldn't you think it's fair to say it's a big leap, right? To go from, as you pointed out, it's never happened.
Well,
it's a leap that's never been done. So it's not AAA to the majors. It's probably to be fair, it would be like single A ball to the majors.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I think that's
so
fair.
Go ahead.
And I think when you think about people like Alex Rodriguez, when you think about people like Derek Jeter, when you think about a lot of baseball players, they did that leap. So the leap is doable and it's possible. It just requires exceptional talent, right? And I think, and to be honest, and I'm not saying that I possess that, but what I'm saying is that I think that I possess a certain set of skills that are going to help me deal with the major problems of this country. What are they? Inflation, number one, right? I'm the only elected official, the only one, you can look this up, who's cut 20% of their budget in 1 year, okay? And the skill set that it takes to make those kind of cuts to balance a budget doesn't depend on the number of zeros that you're cutting, okay? It depends on the quality of the person that you are. Do you have the courage? Like I said, I wasn't union supported, right? And I won, and I had to make tough choices to cut expenses. We have a 20% budget gap right now, which is exactly what I inherited in Miami in 2009. We have to balance our budget. Unfortunately, the last time we balanced our budget, it was a Democratic president and a Republican Congress under Newt Gingrich. And we have to do that because we have to get inflation under control. We have to get interest rates under control. It's making the poor in this country. And average everyday Americans who have their money mostly in bank accounts are getting hit. The Bidenomics, that's the real Bidenomics, this whole nonsense of Bidenomics. The Bidenomics is the poor get poor under Joe Biden. That's the truth. Second issue is immigration. Right? I don't think that there is a person, I don't think anybody can legitimately argue that there's a person that is better qualified to solve the immigration, which is a multi-decade, multi-administration problem, than a Hispanic Republican president. Period. Full stop. Okay? And we know mostly what needs to happen. I think I bring some new ideas to the solution. Obviously, everybody agrees we have to get our border under control. It's a disaster. It's a mess. 7 million people undocumented illegally. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to jump in on that one point you just made. There's nobody better suited to solve the immigration crisis than a Hispanic Republican president, full stop. Why does your ethnicity make you uniquely qualified? Which, by the way, you're Cuban. And for what it's worth, Mayor, I once had a business that focused on quinceañeras. And one of the reasons that I had a business...
Wow. So you know all about it.
But one of the reasons, for what it's worth, that I chose to create a media company that focused on quinceañeras is that the term Hispanic is a broad and generalized term that sweeps over a people who have great amount of differences. The only commonality truly is language. There are cultural divides, but one of the few commonalities is the quinceañera. The only Hispanic or Latino ethnicity that doesn't do the quinceañera is, quite honestly, well, not Cubans. Cubans have quinceañeras. It's Puerto Ricans who do Sweet 16s.
Cubans definitely do quinceañeras.
Yeah, it's the Puerto Rican ethnicity that has adopted the Sweet 16. But my point is, you're Cuban. You know, I think something like 70-80% of the American Hispanic population is of Mexican origin. So what is it about? But I almost find that inconsequential. Why does your ethnicity help you versus me if I were running for president in solving the immigration issue?
A lot of reasons. I think, first of all, you can, as you said, you can communicate in their native language for Hispanics. I think that's incredibly important. I think I, as a Hispanic, understand the nuances of the Hispanic culture better than someone who's not a Hispanic. We can have a quiz on it if you want, but I doubt that anyone understands. And by the way, as mayor of Miami, I doubt that anyone understands better what's happening in Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, etc. Right, and Mexico, among others. So I don't think that there's and then I think it's important that if the person is a Hispanic Republican, it's important politically because the Hispanic population is 20% of America, and we want them to continue to trend Republican. You have Democrats calling Hispanics, as you said, improperly, monolithically, Latinx. That doesn't work. That doesn't hit. That doesn't stick, right? And then saying, that they're as unique as San Antonio tacos, which is what the First Lady said, right? And I think yesterday's or today's news is that Connecticut is saying, okay, Latinx doesn't work. We're going to go Latin E, which
really
again
I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, yeah. That's today's news. So my point is that Democrats have been so deficient on this. And I do believe that a Republican who is Hispanic, who understands the nuances, you've said it correctly, right? It can't just be any Hispanic who can speak the native language, who can understand. I think that person can communicate better. I think he can demystify this issue because now we can attract more Hispanics, which is one of the reasons why I'm also running for president. Attracting more Hispanics, attracting more young voters, and attracting more people in cities, which I've done successfully in my career.
Yeah. I guess the only reason I kind of latched on and jumped in there for the moment is I think many Americans have just gotten really, really weary of identity politics and the idea that what qualifies.
I get that.
And I'm not suggesting you're doing that. I truly am not. I don't want someone's qualifications nor their detractions to be attached to their superficial qualities. I just want people judged on their merit and their character and their judgment.
For sure. I agree with that, by the way.
I'm sure you do. I appreciate that. And I'm going to, by the way, in the course of our conversation, I want to challenge you on a few different issues because I want to see where you land, on all those different characteristics. So let's stick on identity politics for just one moment. On your Wikipedia, and trust me, I will discount Wikipedia as anyone's bio
Please.
or description. But one of the things
We've
it
been
talks
trying
about.
to change our Wikipedia page for a while, so I don't know what it is that you're focusing on. But
I promise my understanding and research of you is deeper than Wikipedia. But I know that you've been a supporter of Pride events in the city of Miami, sure. and that's great. That's fine. I think for many people, it's like there's a bit of a backlash growing towards Pride because it's metastasized into something beyond simply we believe, hey, let us live our lives or tolerance. It's gone in a different direction, and where it's become something like bake my cake and believe what I believe. And for example, Ron DeSantis, your governor, has push forward the Parental Rights and Education Act to sort of say we don't need that type of indoctrination in our school. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that's something you do not agree with the governor about, the parental rights and education. So tell me why. Right. Oh, okay, please correct the record and tell me where you are on this.
Yeah, I'll tell you. That's no problem. So first of all, I agree with the central premise that a lot of people in the Pride community, right, are going beyond, equal rights for consenting adults, which is something that everybody agrees with, or a lot of people agree with. Maybe some people don't, or maybe some people have religious views on it, but have sort of separated their religious views and their personal views from their public policy views and from how the state manages it, right? But I do think it's gone to a place where you hear people chanting, "We're coming for your children," right? In these, you have people that are naked. In public, right? Something that we wouldn't allow our homeless to do. We wouldn't allow any human being to do because we think that that's inappropriate, right? And it's not something that kids should be exposed to. It's frankly not something adults should be exposed to, right? When people are not walking around naked. That's just not something that we accept as a society. It has nothing to do with who you love or with who your partner is. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a common decency that we as a society agree on. In terms of the Parental Rights Act, I totally agree that I, as a father of two, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, do not want schools or the government, for that matter, telling us what we should do with our children in terms of education on sex matters, right? What I said, and I think the press will take a kernel and they'll sort of spin it the way that they want to, is for your older children, they should be taught sex education. I just don't think it should be indoctrination, and that's where I draw the line, right? Because I think it's one thing to talk about sex education, which I think many of us learned in school as we got older, but this indoctrination of all these different movements now that are trying to seep in through education, it's wrong. Kids have it tough enough. You know what I mean? Without having to have an agenda pushed on them by anyone in government or in schools or whatever. And I think that they can come to their decisions with their friends and their family and their faith and proceed from there. And there's a lot of psychological potential damage that can happen when, in my opinion, when on both sides, by the way, trying to get kids not to feel that they're gay or trying to get kids, to do certain things while they're children. There's a lot of psychological information on that, which can be damaging, and I think that we have to be very careful as a society there.
So I read, and I love how you emphasized that one of the things that qualifies you, though, to solve, for example, the immigration issue is that you are a Republican. Tell me, I read that you did not support Donald Trump in either 16 or 20 and didn't support Ron DeSantis in 2018. Why?
So I did support a Republican candidate in 16 and 20. I actually wrote in Marco Rubio, who's a friend and someone who I admire and who I thought was the best choice for president. He made it very, very far and didn't, unfortunately, become the nominee. And I supported Mike Pence, who I thought did a wonderful job in the debates, and I thought was, I wrote him in. That was what I decided to do in that. And I've said, by the way, that if somehow I don't get elected and I don't get nominated, that I would support the former president against Joe Biden. I think that the current president is just not electable on a multitude of different levels. In terms of the former governor or the governor, I did actually support him in the primary. I gave him money. I raised him money in the primary. He made no effort. He didn't say thank you. He made no effort to build a relationship with me. I don't think that he's been known as a relationship type of person, which is why I think he's lost 12 out of 13 congressional endorsements in his own state, and including, one from one of my law school classmates, Greg Stubbe, who fell from a ladder and didn't get a call from the governor. So I think he can work on that. And that he never asked me, by the way, he never even asked me for his endorsement. And I never endorsed his opponent. I never raised money for his opponent. I simply said that I voted for his opponent.
Andrew Gillum,
he won.
Right? Is that you're referencing Democrat Andrew Gillum
right.
instead of Ron DeSantis for governor?
I'm glad he won. I supported him in his reelection. I raised money for him after that election. He came to my law office and raised money for him. So I think people try to spin a narrative because it benefits them, his surrogates, et cetera. And I think, look, I also believe in loyalty. And I think, he was supported in that campaign by the former president, and he had people that helped him in a difficult moment where he made some mistakes in that campaign. And he dumped those people unceremoniously after the campaign. So, look, I believe in loyalty. I believe in asking people for support. I believe in building relationships. And by the way, as president, those are important qualities. If you want to build relationships with areas that our current president has fractured, like the Middle East and others, you need to understand how to build relationships. Our current president and our current administration does not know how to build relationships. And that's why the United States' status around the world has diminished and why we're projecting weakness just about everywhere.
So it's fair to say that your lack of support previously for Governor Ron DeSantis and your differences today with Ron DeSantis, is it fair to say are more about personality and character and less about policy differences?
Yeah, I think we agree on a lot of policy. I think we disagree on some things. I definitely think we have different personalities. There's no doubt about it. I don't make much of it. I understand in the press, people like to talk about things that are conflictive. I like to talk about things that are positive and focus on things that are productive conversations. I don't agree with my wife on everything. You're not going to agree with everybody on every single issue. That's impossible. So,
I think that's a really. I appreciate that point. I truly do. Because the goal of my interview with you and my conversation isn't to get some media splash moment about why Francis Suarez and Ron DeSantis don't get along. But I think, and I love the turn to positive because our country is starving for some positive solutions and some positive attitudes. I think in asking you your differences with Donald Trump or with Ron DeSantis, what I'm hoping to find, though, is the differentiating factor. Because you're the third politician from the state of Florida to enter the race for president of the United States. So let's look for those on policy, okay?
Well,
let's look for those.
My differentiating factors are simple. I define myself by what I'm for, not what I'm against.
Let's do that. I want to ask you about a couple issues, if you don't mind. Tell me, because I know as mayor, preparing Miami, for climate events has been a big part of your job. Now, where are you on climate change? On if you were president of the United States, on where you would prioritize policy when it comes to climate change? Do you feel like it's an existential threat, like so many Democrats do? Where are you on climate change?
Sure. I think there's an intersection between economics and the environment that is where I fall. For example, we have the Everglades, right, which is our drinking water. We need to preserve our drinking water for existential reasons, right? That's something we need to take care of. We also have our bay, which is a producer of billions of dollars of ecotourism. That's an asset. I learned how to snorkel. I learned how to scuba dive in our bay. I want my children to be able to do that as well. So it's an asset that we need to take care of. We have hurricanes and flooding, right? That's not Republican or Democrat. It's not a Republican hurricane or a Democrat hurricane. And to be honest, I've gotten more money from the state, from a Republican-controlled state, than I have from the Biden infrastructure bill, right? I haven't seen a penny of that money yet. Now, it may come. I hope it comes, because if he's authorized it, I hope we get it. But I don't agree with climate as a social engineering mechanism, like we've seen with the Green New Deal, where you're basically trying to impose socialism via the sort of climate agenda.
And so, and you're talking about in many ways, things that I would agree with you about. And just to pick up with where you left off right there on the climate agenda, you're talking about environmentalism on many of these issues, protecting our environment, our natural environment. Yeah. Would that include for you prioritizing carbon emissions? When we talk about a climate agenda, it is always through the prism of controlling carbon. Is that a priority for Francis Suarez?
Of course, it's a priority, but it's a priority given, the good economics of doing that, right? So, for example, do I think we should reduce domestic production of oil? No. I think it's been a huge a problem with the Democratic Party that we have limited domestic production of oil. It's made us weaker in the world markets. It's had the current president talking about buying oil from Chavez, for God's sakes, from Venezuela.
Right.
And then calling the prime minister of Saudi a pariah, and then saying, please increase production in advance of our midterm, so that gas prices could go down and he could do better in the midterm. Like that's not appropriate policy. I do think that carbon capture is probably a feasible technology, and I can tell you that there are a variety of different companies, including many of the oil-producing countries of the Middle East, who are investing tons of money on carbon capture and carbon reduction technology. That's just good business. If you think something that you do may harm the environment, and you have a mechanism by which you can capture it, maybe even repurpose it and use it for something economic, have it create an economic benefit, why wouldn't you do that?
Well, understanding good business is that's important, and therefore also is good judgment. I know you've been a big supporter of cryptocurrency, and the cryptocurrency,
Yep.
You've been criticized for your ready acceptance of cryptocurrency, especially when it comes to, for example, the role. FTX had a role in Miami. It was, naming stadium rights and so forth. And I believe you knew Sam Bankman-Fried. Do you look back on those relationships or that support of cryptocurrency? Is that still something that you are all in on? Do you feel like that was good judgment and good business?
Absolutely, 100% all in on crypto. Look, I think, I think the former president, the governor, and I agree on this. When you're doing this job, you're going to be criticized for a bunch of things that you do. That comes with the territory. And people will always try to create a hindsight is 2020 mindset on things. But for me, what's important is that crypto is generational technology. And the way that this administration has handled crypto shows how out of touch this administration is. They never set the rules for administration and the rules of engagement, really, and regulation, which you basically created a lot of these companies being offshore, which could have been onshore American companies following a regular set of rules. Now they're using the SEC to go after all of these companies as an enforcement sort of regulation by enforcement, instead of just regulating and telling people, hey, these are the rules. If you're custodying assets, you need to do X, Y, or Z with those custodied assets. What was being done by some of these exchanges is how they were custodying their assets. What were they investing in? By the way, it's no different than what happened in a lot of the banking crises throughout our history. It's what asset class are you able to take dollars and invest them in? If you take risky investments, everything can fall. Everything can implode, and then you can, if you have a run on the bank because there's a notion that you're not properly able to meet depositors' withdrawals, your clients' withdrawals, then you have a situation where the whole thing collapses. We've seen that happen in the history of finance many, many, many times, and it could have been avoided had the Biden administration simply regulated and create a good set of rules that invites innovation. And by the way, when you talk about the poor getting poor and you talk about crypto, you're talking about the possibility of certain kinds of instruments like fractionalized ownership of debt, fractionalized ownership of interest in things that are not particularly available to people of regular means that can have an opportunity to create much more wealth and create much higher gains than what they're getting right now in a bank account where they're losing purchasing power and having to pay higher interest rates.
You talked about in that job, both the former president and anyone running for president today would be familiar with criticism. And you talked about I think you talked about your dad, seeing him in that position, dealing with the slings and the arrows. You're getting them this week. You're getting them in a radio because of a radio interview you did with Hugh Hewitt, where you seemed unfamiliar with the Chinese Uyghurs and their human rights crisis there, being persecuted for their religion. It's been described as a genocide, certainly slave labor camps, internment camps for the Muslim Uyghurs of China. You seemed in that interview to have never heard of the Uyghurs. And by the way, I think that's akin to what we were talking about earlier, from single A ball to the majors, right? With skills and talent. Is that an example of the great leap you have to make forward? Tell me about that moment with Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah, I mean, he used a pronunciation of a word that I had not heard before. I've always heard it as Uyghur,
how did he say it?
Which is the way that he said Uyghur.
Like I did. Okay.
By the way, he gave no context, right? It wasn't like you just gave a tremendous amount of context to the issue in asking the question. It was a gotcha question. And I understand with you have to expect those gotcha questions like what's the nuclear triad, which I went into a very long and comprehensive answer to. It was a 19-minute interview, and the last question he says is, what do you think about Uyghurs? And frankly, had never heard the term used in that particular way, pronounced that way. I gave the keys to the city to Enos Cantor Freedom. And if you know Enos, he is an avid human rights activist who has criticized the NBA, particularly for their policy, and they're ignoring the tragedy that the Uyghurs or the Uyghurs are undergoing in China right now. And that's been the central focus. So I am very familiar with the issue. Very much, I advocated for and gave a key to the city to someone who is fighting that cause, probably in the most vociferous way, or one of the most vociferous ways in our country. He's obviously of Turkish descent, and this is, a minority Muslim Turkish population in Xinjiang. So, it is what it is. Like you said, you've got to understand that sometimes these things happen, and you own it at some level, because I had not heard that pronunciation. But look, if I would have asked him what's damas de blanco, or if I asked you right now, what are the damas de blanco, are you going to be able to answer what the damas de blanco are?
No, but to be fair, I'm not running for president.
So
I'm not running. But to be fair, I'm not running for president.
True. But let me tell you who the damas de blanco are. The damas de blanco are women in Cuba who are systematically beaten by the Cuban government because they want to express, their opposition to the government. So, at the end of the day, we can play this game all day. I think if he would have said, for example, look, how do you feel about the repression of Uyghurs, in China, and the fact that they've been put in concentration camps, and the fact that the Chinese government has ordered to shoot them if they try to escape? Do you think that is a human rights atrocity that should be discussed more? Mm-hmm. Do you think that China should be condemned for that? I would have said absolutely. I think it was done in a way that was like, as you said earlier today, to get the sort of virality hits that it actually got, and it worked for Hugh.
Well,
so not so much.
Yeah, and I appreciate that in our conversation today, you've given me time and given me substantive answers. I think this, Mayor, I think that you and anyone will be forgiven of mistakes. I think that it's interesting in many ways. One of the effects of Donald Trump is that people are willing to look past flaws if they believe in your inherent goodness and your authenticity, and you're ultimately competent. Ultimately, your competency to do the job, that they can trust you, okay? And that trust doesn't require perfection. So if I had 2 hours with you, I would love to go over every single issue with you and see where you are. But I'm going to ask you one all-encompassing question now, and it's this.
Sure.
You certainly need to survive a Republican primary to get to a general election for president. If I look at the things that where you are, you are very conservative on abortion. I believe you support a ban on abortion past 15 weeks. And I believe, jump in if I get it wrong, even at a national level, you would support that type of ban. I see you nodding along, which is very conservative. Some would say it's so conservative. Some would say it's so conservative it's going to hurt you in a general election.
Well, I don't think so. I think that 70% of Americans are at a 15-week federal minimum, with exceptions for the life and health of a mother, and with other exceptions for rape and incest. But, I'm pro-life personally. I'm Catholic. My wife, my three sisters, I have no brothers. My mother and my mother-in-law, all pro-life. And we have a very long history with the pro-life movement. But I also think that, I think we would save a lot of babies if we had a federal minimum of 15 weeks and then continue to inculcate a culture of life, which I think is important, helping crisis pregnancies, helping people who want to maybe give up their children for adoption. I mean, some of the greatest Americans have made some of the most amazing accomplishments in our country that were adopted.
And I'm with you, man. That there's a difference between how an issue plays politically and where you are morally. And me bringing up whether or not it plays well in a general election doesn't affect how I feel about the issue morally. So here's the all-encompassing question. I think in this day and environment, there's a great amount of skepticism towards everything. Our institutions, the FBI, the DOJ, agendas on a global scale. And so when I talk to you about climate change, or I talk to you about cryptocurrency, I guess one of the things that I think you will, and I hope you do get on that debate stage. I hope you reach the number of minimum donors needed and the polling above 1% needed to get on that debate stage in August. I think the more voices and the more points of view, the better. I think one of the questions you will have to answer in that environment is, do you share that concern? So I ask you about climate change and I ask you about these things because are you prepared to, it's not about conspiracies. It's not about negativity. It's about, can I trust Francis Suarez as a person to look at this, for example, climate change agenda, but you don't have to address just that one issue, and see that it's not just about trying to make sure that hurricanes don't impact Miami, right? Sure. It's about whether or not there's a greater agenda at play that's being pulled over the American eyes, and can I trust Francis Suarez's judgment to always see the best thing for the American public?
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair question, and the way I would view it is, we spend a lot of time and energy focusing on the things we don't agree on. And I think that's part of the dysfunction of the modern political conversation. And I want to have a different conversation. I want to focus, on the real problems that we have. And I'm not saying climate and the climate discussion is not a real problem, or the Uyghurs in China are not a real problem. Of course, they're real problems. But I think that the central problems for our country right now are inflation, immigration, and the rise of China, right? And the competitive threat that China poses, not just competitively, but also from a national security perspective. I mean, they're pumping fentanyl through our southern border. They're building bases 90 miles away from us. They're using their Belt and Roads initiative to indebt the entirety of our hemisphere in Africa, and we're in a race against them to win the AI war, the quantum war, the crypto war, and also the space ecosystem war, right? So to me, that should be the central focus and the central discussion of the campaign. Is climate important? Of course it's important as a discussion point. And I think that it should be it should be driven by economics. And I think that's my view of it. I don't think we have that healthy of a conversation on it oftentimes. Yeah. Do I think abortion is important? Of course I think abortion is important. And by the way, voters think it's important, right? It's consistently polls as one of the top 5 or 3 issues that people care about. Do I think urban crime is important? Something we haven't had a chance to really talk about. Yeah, I think urban crime is very important. I think we have a sense of lawlessness in this country that is not American, in my opinion, right? And I have a great record. I'm the only candidate that has a great record in reducing crime to historic levels. Last year, we had a 1964 homicide low. This year, we're 40% below that number. We increased funding for police with the limited resources that we had, instead of defunding police like other cities did across America. So, yeah, I think that my view and my vision and how I get to the podium and how I get beyond the podium is if people fall in love with a different way of talking about things, right? If they want to talk just about things that are divisive and that are constantly, this back and forth, I don't think I'm going to outdo some of the people that are on that side of the ledger in that way. That's not going to happen. That's not authentic, to use your word. It's not an authentic version of who I am, and it's not going to sell because it's not real, right? I think I have to be who I am. And people will either like what I have to say or they won't. And I'm okay with that because I agree I believe in democracy. And I think people have the right And by the way, I also believe in the thresholds for the debates as well. I think that they're good thresholds.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, I hope you meet those thresholds. I truly do.
I do too.
Look, you have a great record in Miami, and I think that's a great set of facts to tout. The question will be whether or not that makes you the A-Rod of politics, as we discussed earlier. Whether or not you're ready to go from A to the major leagues, and that's what I appreciate you taking these questions today to see. Not to find where our negativity or disagreements lie, but whether or not we can take on those big issues in a positive vision. And by the way, I'm going to take this conversation full circle before we go. The reason I'm tan, okay, is because even though I have these regrets for not serving, I promised a bunch of Navy SEALs, I'd say it's in the hundreds, I think, that in August I would do their annual swim from the Statue of Liberty to Governor's Island to Manhattan. It's a 3-mile swim, which you're welcome to join, Mayor. You're welcome to join us. It's August 19th.
Okay.
And we're going to do it on Fox.
August 23rd. So if I'm going to meet on the debate stage, it might be a tight thing, but I will definitely consider it for sure.
And we will do it on Fox and Friends. We're going to air it on Fox and Friends live.
I like that.
And I am training outdoors at a pool, and I forgot to put on sunscreen, and there's a lot of glare off that water in the heat of Texas sun.
You're going to wear a wetsuit, right?
No wetsuit.
No wetsuit?
No.
For 3 miles?
It'll be warm enough. We can wear fins, though. You can wear fins.
Oh, you can wear fins.
I don't know how your swim training is, but 3 miles.
I love spearfishing, so I'm big into I'm a big water guy.
Hey man, maybe this is your breakout moment, swimming from the Statue of Liberty to Manhattan. Mayor Suarez, I really appreciate your time today, and I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will. Appreciate you.
Okay. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain Podcast for full episodes right now.